Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Benny Review. It's been a while, but we are back now. Today I'm gonna review your edits, so let's get straight into it. This is the first edit for today. First of all, I think the composition for this one is pretty decent, that's why it caught my eye. However, there are a few things that I think are lacking. First of all, there's fire, but it's not really that bright, and I feel like just with a bit of exposure it could look a lot better. As you can see here, I tried editing that myself. Of course, I don't have the original PSDs, so I just have to use the Instagram screenshots. You're gonna have to excuse the mild approach, but this is what I think could make it look just a tad better. Then also, where the eyes are, I feel like could use some reflectiveness, so I added a reflection of the fire in there, and I think that just gives it a nice little detail. And one last thing I think that could really improve it is making the image a bit more dynamic using lighting. As you can see here, I added some lighting from the right, and I feel like this just makes it a bit more 3D and a bit more deep. Dynamic really is the proper word, so there you go. That is what I would do to improve this edit. All things aside, I do like this one, so let's give it 3 pixels. Then there is this one. I like the colors, but there's one tiny thing off to me. Again, the lighting is extremely important. In the back you can see some buildings and the light is clearly coming from the right. However, on the subject, this is not the case. It's basically just overall lighting. I tried adding a bit of lighting from the side. It doesn't look great, but you get the idea. It makes it look a bit more realistic lighting-wise. Then second of all, these neon elements I think could use a bit of brightening as well to make it sure like they really look bright and like they're, you know, emitting actual light. And finally, a very nitpicky thing I don't think really matters, but I often do, is when you edit eyes like this to make them look nice and glowy, for some reason I always just edit to the bottom only, kind of fading out to the top. I don't know why, but it just seems to me a bit nicer. Take that with a grain of salt though, because I cannot explain why. That's just a feeling I have, deal with it. Overall, I still like it, so let's give this 3 pixels as well. Let me just take a sip. Ooh. On to the next one. This is a very clean and nice composition most of all. It's just warm, it's bright, it's vibrant, I like it. There's one interesting mistake though that I see very big companies do as well. Stars. And to be precise, stars in combination with planets. As you can see here, the stars appear to be in front of this planet because you can see them. In real life, however, this is never the case. Stars are infinitely further away than planets, or at least ones that are as close as this one. I removed the stars from this planet, and as you can see, your subconscious just tells you that this looks better, like more realistic. I don't know why. Well, maybe because it is. Then I also added a bit of lighting on the grass, but that's not really necessary. It's just something I would personally do to make it pop a bit more. But I still really like this one. It looks nice and dreamy. 3.5 pixels. This one looks very nice. The colors blue and yellow just work together really well. One tiny thing, which is difficult to learn, I suppose. It took me a while to get it right too. Perspective. The photo of the rock obviously was taken from a different perspective than the background. This makes just kind of a disconnect between the two photos. The rock himself was shot from basically straight ahead. The city behind is shot from a lower angle, or at least tilted upwards, which makes it look just a bit strange. This is just something you have to get used to, and when you do, you'll see your edits will look a lot more convincing. 3 pixels. Another lovely edit. This one has one major flaw that sadly influences the entire photo. We've discussed it before, lighting. You can tell by the background the light is coming from straight behind those trees, which means the light is, you basically have backlight, right? On these bears, the light isn't really correct, but correct enough for it to look nice. The Jeep, however, not so much. I tried adding some shadows myself, but this looks a bit wonky. You get the idea, however. Your brain is just telling you, like, this makes more sense for some reason. Even if you don't really have an eye for it yet, you can still somehow, you can just feel it looks better. The coloring and everything else is pretty good though, so I'm gonna give this 3.5 pixels. Then we have this very mystical edit, and I really like this one. One thing I think could improve it a ton though, and that is creating another light source. You made an edit here with a singular light source, and that's something I don't really recommend. I'd always go for 2 or 3 to create a more dynamic effect. As you can see here, I added some light coming from above, and this makes it just a bit more... And I'm not sure how best to explain why I do this. It's just, it makes it more... I don't know. But you can judge for yourself, I guess. This one is still very cool though, so let's give this 4 pixels. This is, I think, the most interesting one yet. You obviously tried making a very hazy environment, a hazy room with a lot of haze. However, miraculously, you somehow inverted the mist effect. Essentially, with mist, the front is very clear and the back is very hazy. The further you go back, the less you can clearly see. In this image, however, this is not the case. The foreground is very dark, that's probably a good thing, but it's also very contrastless, like it doesn't have much contrast. While the background does have contrast. Now explain that to me. I tried switching it up and this is what that looks like. As you can tell, this is a huge difference. The background is now a bit more hazy and has less contrast, and the foreground is darker but still contrast rich. I later then also added a bit of a filter to it, but that's preference of course. But you get the idea. Haze works in strange ways. As long as you remember when there's a camera, front is contrastful and rich and dark, and the back is very hazy and you can't really see anything. Essentially. That's the basic rule. So I still really like this one. It's nice and detailed. 4.5 pixels. Another very nice planetary edit. For this one I suggest add some more lighting because that planet is super bright. The ground below, however, not so much, and I think that's what you need. Especially on the car there, you need some proper highlights. And also I notice how the blue tint of the ground and the sky, they're different, and I think it would look a lot better if you sort of make them on the same, what am I saying? Stop! You get what I mean, just make them similar. That looks like this, and I think that could help this one just look a bit more realistic. But I guess that's the point of this video. Still a very nice and sleek edit, 3.5 pixels. This edit is one big bomb of fantasy. I love it. One tiny thing I can take away from this is that your highlights are very bright. And I mean so bright that they become like little thin lines, like white lines. That's what you want to avoid. It does still have to look like lighting, and right now that doesn't really look like lighting to me. Other than that, there isn't really much to say because this is obviously a style, a certain way of creating, so that's preference, and I think that's good. Let's give this 4 pixels. This one I chose as kind of an example how not to do lighting, and this is not meant as like a critique to you, but this, for some reason the lighting just isn't really there for this one. As you can see, the lighting throughout this image is just all over the place. The penguin comes from the right, the rock he's standing on comes from the left, some mountains in the background from the right, left, it's all over the place. And so I tried fixing it sort of, but it's a difficult picture of course to edit if you don't have the PSD, but the point is, the lighting is very important and it's not really present here. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. So yeah, I'm gonna give this one 2 pixels. This one has a unique thing that I think I haven't really covered before, and that is texture. Venom in this photo is very sharp, extremely sharp. And whether or not this is something you like, if you do, at least make sure it's throughout the whole image. As you can see, the chimney is sharp, but not that sharp. So I suggest making that a bit sharper as well, so it matches the Venom photo. Sometimes sharpness and blurriness can be tough, but you have to make sure it all kind of works throughout the whole thing. I suck at explaining things sometimes. Anyway, nice picture, 3 pixels. Then there is this one, and something instantly stood out. The dollar bills, for some reason, don't really fit in, and I believe that's because they're too dark. Paper is pretty thin, and so light would kind of just go straight through, and so you would have to edit that in, especially since there's fire there. Those should look pretty bright still. Then also I applied a bit of a glow there. I'm not sure it needs that, but fire is very bright, and I like glow, so every opportunity I get, I add some glow. Now, this one is very nice, 3 pixels. I'm assuming this is a Pokemon. This is very nice, it looks very cool. The shadow is pretty much spot on. Light comes from above. That means, however, that you're gonna need a highlight on top. That you don't really have, which is the one flaw in this image. A good example would be my Pokemon from Realistified, where if the light comes from above, you're really gonna have to translate that into the Pokemon itself, which is very important to make it look realistic. The strange thing is the shadow below you did get pretty much perfect, so you do know that, which is great. All things considered, I will give this 4 pixels because it does look very nice. Then we have a food picture, which I have never covered before either. I don't know a lot about food photography and stuff. I do know that this image is a tad dimly lit, I feel like. So I literally just added some exposure and that looks like this, already a bit better. And also some shine onto the burger and the sauce. Why? Because I just felt like they didn't really pop and they could, and so I tried making them pop and then this happened. So yeah, you can determine if that's better or not. If it is, great. Very important thing to take away from this is images that are too dark are just not really eye-catching. So imagine you're on Instagram scrolling and you see one of these images, they don't stand out at all because they're so dark. That is something you have to consider when you're making dark images. Sometimes stuff has to be dark, but be careful, is what I'm trying to say. Still, this image looks nice. I'm gonna give this one 3 pixels as well. Now we have this train with some nice blue and yellow tones. I think the windows are a bit too much. The glow is a bit too much, and that's coming from someone that loves glows a little too much. If I were you, I would dial them down just a tad and also make them a bit more orange, like this. Removing glow on a still image is pretty much impossible, but I tried my best, I guess. And I also added some contrast to the image as a whole, because I felt like it just... yeah. Again, that could be a preference thing, but that's what I did. Still, 3.5 pixels, because I do really like this idea. Now, this image is very detailed. I'm loving this one. One tiny thing I would personally do is make the moon a bit brighter and a bit more, brighter, because I feel like that would make it pop just a bit. Right now, there's like a huge bluish, greenish sky with nothing in there. That's what I would do, but that is a preference thing because I do really love this photo. It's detailed, there's a nice haze going on. 4.5 pixels at least. Like this, I love this. And the final one today, this one I just kind of found funny because the lighting is the complete opposite of what it should be. This is not me roasting you, but this is kind of me roasting you. Seriously though, you can flip the planet and it would make sense. Because the light on the ground comes from the right and on the planet comes from the left. That's... you know? All jokes aside, this is very important, so make sure that lighting direction always sort of matches, at least, sort of. Then I guess for today, those are the ones I chose. If you want to have a chance of seeing your edit in the potentially next episode, make sure to tag #BennyReview under your next Instagram post. It's that simple. Can you believe it? Anyways, then I guess for today, that is it. If you like this video, make very sure to leave a like, subscribe, hit that bell so you don't miss a single video, and then I hope I'll see you in the next video.